what we're trying to do, and it's also ever changing. I think one of the things that Codie said in our prep call a number of times is what was true 6 months ago in delivery is not true now, and in another 6 months is going to change. So we're talking about a moving target when we're talking about relating to the delivery companies and that delivery layer. What I'd like to achieve here in the next half hour before we do our roundtables on this later this morning is what is working now for them, what they're discovering that's making sense. And that is proving worthwhile, at least for the time being, in the ways in which they're organizing internally to deal with this new layer, the ways in which they're actually negotiating contracts with them and creating relationships with this layer. And then also, the other thing which is of top of mind for everyone is how do you make sure this layer is not cannibalizing your customers, and how you're actually using this new delivery system to find new customers that you can turn into permanent loyalists. So I want to cover that ground today. Let me ask both Haley and Codie to introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about what you're doing, how you are interacting with the delivery companies at your respective companies.
Sure. So I'm Haley Janke. I work on the digital strategy team for KFC Global. I work with Ashley Travis, who spoke this morning. In my role at the global office, we do more of the strategic planning. So I don't directly interact with any of the aggregators, but what we do is try to find the best practices and understand how each market is working with the aggregators and what's working well that we may be able to transfer to other parts of the world. So that's really kind of how we kind of bring everything together at Global. But I don't directly interact with the aggregators at my position.
Codie Richards. I am probably in role for about 4 months at Carl's Jr. and Hardee's. I'm supporting delivery from a marketing perspective, kind of leading through IT and operations in order to get field engagement, as well as working on our digital roadmap and some of our infrastructure internally outside of delivery as well. So in the digital space in terms of website, digital menu boards, any order point that you would see. Carl's Jr. and Hardee's is an interesting kind of model within the U.S. We have 2 different footprints. So on Hardee's, you are 50% rural, maybe a little bit more. On the Carl's Jr. side, you're closer to 75% urban, suburban. And so you have kind of this density that you can work with from a delivery perspective. So kind of managing 2 different brands and 2 different delivery scenarios.
So you have in essence 2 different strategies for delivery.
One company for all intensive purposes when working with our aggregators or third parties, but 2 strategies for go-to-market.
Let's quickly outline what your current relationship, within your companies, what's the current relationship with the delivery layers in terms of who you're working with and where?
Yeah, so we actually partner with about 15 key aggregators across the world. In some markets, they actually have their own delivery drivers, our own e-commerce channels. In other markets, we have to rely on the aggregator space. And so that's kind of how we're set up. We do think that the aggregators have allowed us to really expand our delivery footprint in markets where we don't have the labor to do so. But at the same time, we still strongly believe that we need to build out our own channels in order to build those one-to-one relationships with our customers and to retarget them and market to them.
And in the U.S.?
In the U.S., we do have a relationship directly with Grubhub. And so that's kind of the sole aggregator that we partner with at the national level.
At the national level, but you have your franchisees are all over the place in terms of relationships? Or are they following your lead?
Yeah, I think that there are some restaurants that have partnered with other aggregators, but at the national level, it's Grubhub is our sole partner. So,
Codie.
We have relationships across 4 partners right now. So I think probably this time last year, it was kind of you would go in and negotiate something with one large partner and see what the best value you can get from each other was. We found that by going with multiple partners, we could cover our footprint and then also figure out how to kind of best negotiate what's going to work best for our individual markets, and took a slightly different approach. And I think as well, we see incrementality from that because the app penetration is different depending on the market. You might have a different customer group in Uber Eats than you would in Postmates or DoorDash.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about how you're vetting these in the various regions, how you're vetting these providers in terms of what are the key points that you're using to determine what group to put together, what the maximum number you can handle.
So it's a huge partnership with franchisees and operations. So as a primarily franchised organization, our franchisees did a lot of the legwork early on and actually vetting what are the operations procedures and the best ways to bring that into the restaurant for kind of seamless operations. Based on that and the collaboration we've been able to add incrementally with the vendors, I would say, though, the approach to how many third-party partners you choose to work with is very much dependent on your kind of digital infrastructure and the roadmap that you intend to have. So you can work with one or many third parties. You can have a website where you take orders yourself and own that data, but then have a white label service, a DoorDash of sorts, deliver on the back end, or you can own it holistically, like Haley's mentioned for some of the international markets where they actually own their own delivery force and the order experience, and then you're controlling all of the data in the brand. So it's figuring out where your size of brand and where you want to be long term. And I think that really does indicate how many partners you partner with and what that looks like in the early stages.
And yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and I'll just add on to that. So we definitely think that maybe like 2 to 3 are kind of the sweet spot for KFC when it comes to partnering with aggregators, because like Codie said, we know that the customers may not always be going to all 3 of them. So we need to make sure that we partner with the partners that have the biggest share in each market. And then when it comes to just operational components of it, we, like many other brands in the room, we don't have a single POS system in a lot of our markets, which can create challenges. And so when you think about the team members accepting orders and keying in orders not only from customers that come up to the counter, but also customers through the drive-thru, and then you add 3 different tablets. If you don't have those completely seamlessly integrated into your system, it just becomes an operational nightmare that really impacts the team member experience, and we know that our customer experience will never exceed the team member experience, so that's something that we really value at KFC. And we definitely try to make sure that if we introduce these new channels, that our stores are equipped to handle them. And additionally, a lot of our markets are smaller, they're lean teams, and so when you think about managing the menu, managing revolving LTOs and things like that, you need to make sure that you have a team that can support updating the menu, the pricing, the LTOs, the food photography across all of these channels. So I think while people may want to get onto 5 or 6 different platforms, I think focusing on the 2 or 3 that have the biggest share is really ideal for us.
How are you, since both of you raised the issue of infrastructure and how you're organizing around this is a whole new business for a lot of, for this world. How are you organizing it internally? What have you learned about how you best staff up and organize and integrate with the rest of the company for this to work?
Yep. So I think it's definitely a cross-functional endeavor in each of our markets, across legal, across food safety, operations, marketing, and obviously the IT department. And so in parallel, we have been getting more alignment on our POS systems. We're still not there in a lot of our markets, but we have made a lot of headway, which I think is helpful. And then our markets do have direct partnerships where they meet on a regular cadence with the aggregators to understand what business impact they're driving, what LTOs they need to be running, what kind of offers they're looking for on their platforms for some of the hyper-local marketing efforts. So I think it's really a cross-functional endeavor across many parts of the business. It's not just a digital initiative. It's definitely something that touches all aspects of it.
Is this a new dedicated team that's been built up for this? Or
no,
you're simply,
it's people who are doing like
everybody's got a new
things.
delivery task attached to what they do?
Yeah.
Similar, a lot of working off the side of the desk. Initially, we're putting some systems in place now in order to build out what that team looks like moving forward, but cross-functional from everything on accounting with reconciliation to operations to our IT team on a daily basis, figuring out, I think the kind of elephant in the room is POS. So that's definitely something that you have to solve for in order to really get delivery integrated.
Is this sort of pushing everybody towards a more integrated and sophisticated POS system?
For sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I think this is, but in addition, all the data and like the new channels that we're introducing, it's just something that we have to do, regardless if we had aggregators, if we had our own channels. Like the POS system being inconsistent is definitely something that we have to tackle.
You mentioned that you're working internationally, and there are a lot of different systems internationally, and part of your job is to sort of gather the best practices from this. What are some of the things that are happening internationally in international markets that you've learned and brought back to this market, or that you expect things that are happening internationally that are probably going to happen here that you need to get ready for?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are several differences. We see a wide gamut of different things happening across markets. So we see from a commission fee perspective, we see everything from a 5% commission fee being charged to 25% commission fee. And sometimes those are coming from the same aggregators in different markets, which is a big opportunity for us to try to leverage our scale and renegotiate some of these contracts. We also see differences in the parity that we have to have in each country with these aggregator platforms. So in some countries, we have to have parity on the menu pricing. We can't price our menu items at a higher price point on the aggregators in order to eat into some of the delivery fees or the commission fees that we have to pay. We also see differences in marketing opportunities. So in some countries, they don't offer any kind of paid placement in the aggregator platforms. It's all based on algorithms that we don't really understand. A lot of the operational factors play into that, so making sure that your stores are accepting orders very quickly. It may have something to do with how far away the customer is from that store. So there's algorithmic-based ranking that we really have no control over. And then there are markets where we do see marketing opportunities like paid placement for trending search or paying for tile placement at the top of the app. So there are differences there. And then we also have, I think one of the opportunities that we already take advantage of in some markets, but not all, is just the way that we leverage the partners. So like I said, we do have our own e-commerce platforms in some markets, but they may not be able to tap into a certain day part because during non-peak hours, they may not staff accordingly. And so what some of the aggregators have allowed us to do is to unlock those day parts. And what the customer sees on their end is they can order from the KFC.com experience, wherever that may be. And the order is actually fulfilled and delivered by the driver fleet of the aggregator. So we see we see a difference in, some of our markets are using end-to-end services from the partners, and some of them are only doing the delivery part of the service.
I wanted to talk about negotiating with these companies and how important the contract is and structuring the contract, and also where we are in terms of best practices in negotiating with the delivery companies, what leverage you do have, where you're finding that you're able to leverage it, what kind of data you're able to get back from them. Why don't we talk about just the basic state of negotiation with this layer and where you're finding, where you're finding wiggle room, what's negotiable, what's not negotiable.
Okay. So I think this is kind of a sensitive topic because it's something that we're all engaged with on a regular basis. And this goes back to the comment of everything changing every 6 months. So initially contracts were very much, we want exclusivity when you were talking with the partners. That has quickly changed. I think there's always going to be a win-win when you have a media buy that they get tagged onto, or they're able to help you with initial trial within their platform. And so there's certain things that you always look to negotiate within those contracts as you get them set up. Things are changing. So exclusivity partnerships ended with some big QSRs last year, and then that changed the landscape. And I think we're feeling that now, as well as Postmates delayed their IPO a little bit. DoorDash is getting ready for an IPO. None of them are extremely profitable, right? So there's going to be some changes in consolidation that is going to change that landscape. I think for me, thinking about data as a part of that is that they own these consumer bases. And so how do we think through getting to those targets and then engaging those targets differently than we would normally with our advertising? And having that advertising be more specific to the platforms to make sure that the cost per engagement, you're reaching the right person because they have the hurdle of downloading the app. So just tagging your media isn't always going to get you to conversion. You really have to pay to play in the app in some ways. And that traditionally has been free delivery or a percentage off of an order or minimum spend, and you get $5 back, things like that.
So in terms of negotiating, I think that we are, like I said, we're very decentralized, but we are making headway and kind of thinking about how we can leverage not only the scale of KFC, we've got 23,000 plus restaurants across the world, but also across Yum. So I think that when it comes to leverage, that's really a big part of what we can bring to the table is just the size, the distinctiveness of our brand, and what we can bring to their companies as well. So I think those are the things that we're really bringing to the table as leverage. And then when it comes to data, we're obviously looking for more customer data. Some of our markets do get complete customer data. They get email addresses and phone numbers, obviously not everywhere. But I think the customer data point is really the biggest pain point for all of us. It's more, we need to figure out how we can understand who our customers are, whether it be through email address or credit card token, what they're buying and how frequently they're coming to us so we can understand how we can better market to them.
How is that picture changing in terms of what data they're giving you access to? Are we seeing any daylight and changes in the system of what some of these platforms are willing to give up? And what are the key data points that you're getting now that are at least of most value to you now?
So I think the non-negotiables that we do have are things that really affect the customer trust, the trustability of our brand with our customers. So I think Tiffany mentioned earlier, like when drivers eat the fries, which does happen, the customer is not going to relate that back to the aggregator. They're going to think, wow, KFC really dropped the ball on that one. So I think that having insight into customer complaints, customer feedback, some of the ratings and reviews that are coming from the customers, those are non-negotiables that we absolutely have to have. Obviously, the sales transactional data is what we get today. We're still, we're working on getting more customer data because right now it's pretty fragmented.
I think there's ways around kind of some of the data in terms of menu mix and things like that, getting a little more granular that you can find some solutions for. They are in their infancy of really getting smart about customers. So a lot of these apps are now starting their own subscription programs and starting to really understand that there's value in their core consumers and how to best initiate those groups. And so I think as they get smarter with data, we'll be able to ask for more data. It's there, it's just not collected in a usable way right now in many cases as well. And so as they evolve, we'll continue to evolve and figure out ways to partner. I do see them talking more so about here are the number of customers within the app that purchase your brand, and after a marketing program, here's how many customers within the app in this area that are purchasing your brand. And so there's small moves in terms of performance metrics that we're getting in the marketing space. But today it's really operational in what we're seeing and using.
Yeah, and I think just from a reporting perspective, what we've heard and just kind of seen is that some of the reports are available, but there's not like a regular cadence. It's more ad hoc. If you request it, they'll provide some of it to you. But it doesn't feel like they have a full analytics team sometimes to kind of manage that on a regular ongoing basis. Obviously, they have lots of brands to service. We're not their main priority. And so I think a lot of it is how do we get more regular cadence and build closer relationships with the aggregator partners in order to get those at a more regular frequency.
That's a real issue for you guys. You're dealing with a layer of essentially startups, and they're going through all the growing pains of startups. First of all, we don't know who's going to be here in 2 years. That's sort of the baseline of a startup economy. Their customer service itself is very iffy. They're growing faster than they can handle. Is this an area of opportunity for a lot of you guys who are legacy brands? You have experience with customer service. You have experience with handling data. Is this and now you've got a whole bunch of insecure competitors in the market who are suddenly more insecure. Codie, as you outlined, we've got some that have pulled back from their IPOs. Are there areas of opportunity for you in both negotiation but also in partnership at this stage in the delivery economy?
I think it's taking a step back because delivery is going to be there. Convenience is something the consumer is going to want. Third-party delivery is the way that's being met mostly today, but that doesn't mean that can't shift, and especially given your brand strategy. So if you're all about delivering convenience and easier ways of ordering, do you start to take this trend and push it into a different direction, into a more owned space on that experience and use the time to do that? Or do you remain dependent on third party? So I think that's more of the question is it a shift in strategy as the consolidation happens, knowing that they've had really rapid growth the last few years, but what is the size of the prize ultimately? And will that continue at that same rate? Or do we need a shift and think about convenience differently?
Yeah, I think our strategy, kind of the long-term strategy, is really to partner with these aggregators as an acquisition channel to bring new customers into our brand. But at the end of the day, we really want them to come to our channels first. And so building out more distinctive and customizable assets of our own is really the long-term strategy. But I definitely think that the partnerships will continue to evolve, and as some of these aggregators do consolidate, and I think that they are very much in like the startup phase, a lot of them, and so I think that they will become more, more sophisticated. You know, some of them are exploring loyalty programs of their own and starting to realize what the value of a loyal customer is. And so I think we have to play offense and defense kind of with these partners.
So as I'm going to move into the last section of my question, which does have to do with sort of converting and retaining your own customers in face of this. But think about some questions that you might have for them in the meantime. What have been the most, at least at this point, what have been the most successful tactics for you in taking those newly acquired customers that are coming through these third-party platforms and converting them to your own, or making sure, or ensuring, structuring both the deals and your own marketing program so that you're not losing them, they're not cannibalizing your existing base?
Yeah. So I think a couple examples. Whenever we think about doing any media, if it's a new partner, we'll do some above-the-line media with billboards and taxi toppers, but beyond that, we really try to keep the marketing within the ecosystem of the aggregator in order to find customers within that system. If we do billboards all the time, 24/7, as long as the partnership exists, then we really kind of just push customers into building a habit with the aggregator and not with our own platforms. So in order to build awareness, we do the kind of above-the-line media. Once we're established, then it's more about just announcing things through their own channels. When it comes to offers, we do see more success with doing some high-end offers that really try to inflate the margins instead of doing discounted offers all the time, which is really not great financially, and it's also just kind of makes us seem like a discounted brand. And so we try to keep the most aggressive offers for our own .com or app experiences, and then put the high-end offers on those aggregator platforms where we do already see a higher AOV happening as well.
Codie, how about you?
Similar in terms of using tagging for awareness when you first partner, and then figuring out a way to incite trial within the platform and get placement. So kind of thinking of it as any other e-commerce platform where you really want to make sure that your rankings and your page placement within that experience is optimized. So there's promotional tactics across each vendor that help you to do that. And additionally, it's a promotional cadence of figuring out what is that right promotional strategy over time, because we do find delivery to be incremental to the business. And so in that regard, a lot of these customers maybe aren't coming to you through your drive-thru every day or every week. And so therefore, how do you engage them differently and maintain that relationship until you can get to a place where maybe you have delivery on your own to bring them in-house?
Yeah, and then I think just in addition to that, so converting customers over to our own platforms. Ashley showed the video earlier of the secret menu in Australia, but I think that just really speaks to creating really personalized and unique experiences on our own platforms that the customers can't get anywhere else. Another example of that we have in market today is in Poland, actually. So they have a custom bucket experience that's only available on their online channels. You can't get it in store. Obviously can't get it on the aggregator platforms, and it's really a unique experience where the customer can create their own bucket. They can add as much different types of chicken as they want. They can add as many sides as they want, any dips they want, and it's a very interactive experience on the platforms. You can see the bucket kind of being built. It's fun for the customer. Really makes them feel like we understand them, and it's really unique to them and what they want. And so experiences like that will really help us set ourselves apart. Some of our markets do like geofencing, where you can actually check in and make sure the order is prepared right whenever you get there, versus setting a time and maybe you get stuck in traffic. So there are some levers that we can pull within our own channels to really make those experiences stand out more and create that stickiness that makes a customer want to download one more app on their phone.
Which it sort of puts you guys in the same position that a lot of publishers were, media publishers were in relationship to a lot of the online aggregators like Google and Facebook, is that it sort of pressed them to emphasize the uniqueness of their relationship. In many ways, it was a challenge and a disruption that ultimately had some positive impact on the ways in which brands actually were thinking about their customers and emphasizing that first-party relationship and making the most of it. What questions?
Questions. See, Steve,
Really?
you usually have the questions, Steve.
That's right,
why.
and I'm not given.
Okay, not given.
This is
Who would win in an arm wrestle between you two?
right over here.
Okay, where's the question?
That's right.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's see. Thank you. I was just vamping. Here we go.
Hey, Ryan Murrin from Poncheros. So on the third-party promotional, the marketing opportunities that you can do through DoorDash or Uber Eats, how are you managing that with franchisees? Are you allowing them to create and manage and execute their own promos, or are you doing that at the national level?
I'll take that one. So we're still in a test and learn phase on many things. Trying to do most of the activation when we're at scale within a DMA, so that we do have franchisee buy-in and can give a good consumer experience across locations. So it's kind of how we've managed it to this point. I think there's probably going to be very similar to what you've heard from other presenters, that they look at their social calendars and figure out the right moments to be doing things. I think this is just another touch point too to build into marketing plans moving forward.
I'm going to put you guys on the spot. Since Codie, you mentioned this, what we see now may not be what we're going to see in 3 to 5 years. Where do you think we will be in 3 to 5 years in terms of how this is going to play out, both with not only this delivery economy, but also where the consumer might end up in terms of how they're going to relate to you and what place delivery is going to play in their lives and in your businesses?
Let me look at my magic ball
Yes.
here.
Yes. Do it.
You know, I mean, I definitely think that there's going to be some key partners or like players that really just pull ahead. I feel like it's going to be a lot less fragmented going forward. I mean, it's really hard to say. I don't know. It's really not a good answer, but.
I see a lot of parallels in what's happening now in QSR to a previous life I had in consumer packaged goods, when we started with e-commerce trends and different routes to market, and then how channels started to really define themselves in different ways for the consumer. I think there is, delivery right now, you group limited service restaurants and QSR together in many ways when you think about it, but yet a QSR has a drive-through and it is modeled differently and the footprints are different. So I think all of that is going to start to change, and we're going to see a little bit, you see channel blurring, but then also some more differentiation and distinct consumer benefits coming out of it.
Yeah, I mean, we are, I guess, at KFC just starting to think about what our assets look like with all these new channels. So right now, when you think about people coming in to pick up their own food, aggregators coming in to pick up their food and kind of crowding the counter, people who are ordering at the counter being, like, who are all these people? So we're trying to figure out how we can better lay out our restaurants in order to bring all these channels on board and make them more seamless. So I definitely think that we're going to have to be where our customers are, whether that's if they would want to come pick up their food, maybe at some point. I mean, yeah, I don't know.
It's fundamentally changing almost every aspect of the business, and it'll be multiple moving targets going forward for at least the next 3 to 5 years until we see consumer behavior shake out too. Because in one sense, we don't fully know exactly how people want to interact with the restaurants. Haley, Codie, thank you very much. Each one of them is going to lead a panel at the end of the morning to